It's your boy Zay-P, Zay-P that I am. I am that I am, as you are that you are, for we are all that we are. From the individual to the many, from the many comes the all, and the all is one. So your boy's back at it, back with a brand new video. I'm feeling into a lot of collective energies currently at this time. I know the full moon is coming in big time. There's a lot of shifting energies happening just in the collective overall, right? And it's worth noting. And so I felt the need to just kind of come in, maybe connect with the guides, connect with my higher self, connect with the I am essence, and bring forward any information about what we are experiencing collectively. There's just so much frenetic energy happening in this world. We've got illusions of justice popping up while simultaneously horrendous, atrocious acts are being committed. We have disclosure happening at a scale, at a more rapid and grander scale than it's ever happened. And there's a lot of hurting people. There are a lot of deep hurting people in this world today that are not seen, that are going unheard, that are completely unspoken of, and that have nobody to advocate for them. And so here we are, advocating for the collective, advocating for those who are unseen, who are unheard. Here we are advocating for you. The time has come for the collective to put on their big boy pants. It's time to man up, woman up. This is about growth, progressive growth. Not only just the growth that you individually incur, but the growth that you collectively undergo as you up level to match the frequency and vibration of Gaia. And so what's coming into place is this need for radical responsibility. It's a need for people to step up and taking ownership of their lives. There's too much detachment going on. There's too much people assigning the blame, people looking for places to point and judge, people looking outside of themselves, people unable to take responsibility for their actions, yes, but responsibility for your lives. See, there is so much talk about the responsibility taken for actions, and then many get caught into this whole, I'm not responsible for this, I'm not responsible for that. But the truth is, the matter is, the life you experience is your life. Therefore, you are responsible for everything that you allow into it, for everything that you bring into it, for everything that happens to come across you, even by circumstance, even by chance, because that only comes across your path through your own nature, through your own guidance, through your own footsteps. Did you wind up in that street where those things occurred? And this is not to say you blame the victim, but no one else can heal the victim but the victim. And that is where your responsibility lies. And it's time to start putting off all of our responsibilities, trying to shift the blame, trying to shift the focus away from ourselves. Because the truth of the matter is, we are doing all of this shifting away from ourselves because so many of us are hurting inside and cannot bear to even look at ourselves, let alone to sit and be with it, let alone to accept it, to accept all of it, the good and the bad, the ups and the downs, the ins and the outs. So many of us are unable to even forgive ourselves in those situations, let alone forgive another. And so instead of coming to a place of healing and resolution, we put off our own healing by looking outward, by seeking to point the blame, by seeking to assign and attribute cause so that we can clamor for revenge and for vindication or for justice or for any other external salve that prevents us from having to deal with us within. Even at the most traumatic of experiences that you've experienced, regardless of how much punishment you inflict on the perpetrator, regardless of how much righteous indignation you may have, regardless of all of the movements that you can create and cause through the fire and transmutation of that pain, ultimately, that healing first has to take place within yourself. And until that happens, regardless of whatever you do externally, regardless of all the ways you fight, and regardless of all the ways you rant and rave, whether you advocate for others, whether you fight the good fight, and none of it will satiate that deep hole within until you take that time to go within and heal. And that requires letting go of everything else and being okay in stillness, being okay with being, with allowing yourself to be, and with allowing yourself to experience. And so, this is one of the things my guys just wanted me to talk about, because this past week I've been going through my own internal processes, my own layers of ego death, because this is a process and it's ever unfolding and it's ever undoing. And no matter how many times one may shed layers of the ego, how many times one may have an egoic death or even try to kill their own ego, the ego will always arise again, as long as there's individual perspective. And so for me, this past week has been a process of really recognizing a lot of my own egoic investments and attachments, and my own egoic ways that really needed purging, that really needed me letting go of certain things, of certain hurts, of certain ways that I was offended, and allowing the healing to take place. And that wasn't easy. It's not ever a process that is easy, especially when one is wronged. If you feel wronged, if you feel wronged and slighted in the slightest of ways, for anybody to feel wronged or hurt in any way, it is a natural egoic reaction to want to retaliate, to want some form of revenge, maybe even justice. But regardless of all of that clamoring, regardless of even if there's the perception of achieving that, the effects are not felt until I allow myself to heal within. And this is where the radical responsibility comes in, because you have to take responsibility for how you're feeling. You have to take responsibility for what you're thinking, for what you're believing, regardless of, oh, society taught me this, oh, my parents taught me that, oh, school taught me this, and this is the things I've learned. You have to take responsibility for your life. If you've learned toxic things, it is your responsibility to unlearn those things. You can only carry on for so long saying, I learned this from other men, I learned this from the culture, from the media. You can no longer say, oh, this is how all women are acting, this is what I've learned. If you yourself recognize it is a toxic behavior, one that does not serve you, then it is impingent upon you to take that radical responsibility to change it within yourself. No more putting it off and blaming others. At the end of the day, what we feel internally is directly a cause by our own impulses, our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own emotions, and as such, it is always on us to control those things, to change those things, to figure those things out. And we do not do this by lashing outward. We do not do this by blaming everything else. Yes, there's a time and there's a place for that. And yes, somebody does horrendous, atrocious crimes. You want to see justice for that. There's a time to speak out. There's a time to advocate for that. But at the end of the day, those victims or those people who were most deeply hurt by whatever perpetrator still have to go within and do that healing for themselves. And this is where we're at as a global collective. We are all needing to go within and face our own healings. Go within and take radical responsibility for our lives. to go within and recognize that everything we experience is only at the movement and the motion of our own intentions and actions within the experience. And so the time comes where you start to realize you have to take responsibility, radical responsibility for things. And that's just one of the things that I had to go through this past week, where I felt called to just make amends for certain things. There were certain things that I didn't even do anything wrong, but it was more important for me to be loving than it was for me to be right. It was more important for me to extend a gesture in good faith and in goodwill than it was for me to hold on to a grudge. Because on the opposite end of that was peace, was my peace, my own mental sanity. And there were some issues that didn't even get fully resolved. But for my own well-being, I needed to express certain things and come to certain agreements and come to certain points of view, just to have your perspective heard, in order to allow my own personal healing, regardless of what the others may have experienced, regardless of whomever else was affected. For me, this is what I had to do. And in that, it's allowed me to step into deeper levels of peace and stillness. I'm coming back around to a place of purity, even in my own channeling and connection, because I've been able to shed some egoic layers that have caked up over time. This is the thing about ego. This is the thing about the entire process, the entire spiritual journey. As much as we learn, as much as we process, as much as we purge, there may still be other things that need to be purged, that need to come up. We may still accumulate new energies. We may still pick up bad habits, bad thoughts. We may still walk through this world as humans, picking up all sorts of things that need to be shed. And this is why it is a continual process. So now I'm back to a place of purity in my channel, in my acceptance, and really coming to the point of being okay with just being. Being okay just in stillness. To know that I am, and that can never change. That pure awareness is always. And whatever is laid upon that pure awareness, that is another story. But the fact of I am, that brings me peace. For us to all get to this place where we can just come back to pure being, honest expression in our truths, in our lives, and who we are. Coming back to that place of just being okay, just being. It takes radical responsibility. And this is the secret to transforming our lives. Radical, radical, radical responsibility for everything. Even things that are not your fault, because responsibility is not taking the blame for fault. Responsibility is taking ownership of your own life, of your own experiences. So no more sitting on the fence, no more waiting for the world to tell you who you are, what your life is about. Heed this call. Radical responsibility. Take ownership of your life. Be still and know who you are, your connection to the divine. Be okay with just being your truth. And in that, the world shall transform around you. Be sure to smash that like, hit that subscribe, as I'm growing out this community. And we definitely want to continue making forward momentum together. It's your boy Zay-P.